We are not finished untangling it, not yet.
What is this? CSI KFC?
To come back to another YouTube channel, but this time we are not focusing on any other film if not the one that takes all your heart. And of course, I'm not talking about a simple Rotten Tomatoes movie or other romantic comedy, but of course Knives Out, the detective story of Rian Johnson. Whoever never told or watched this movie at the cinema is very invited to do that, because it's out of the blue and the very sense of the word. I mean, the movie is structured in a double phase motivational, like sort of detective stories. We have the right side that is completely controlled by our mental prescription and prejudice that first are into a prompt directly to understand the structures of the movie, and then we have the other left side that is not completely discovered, and that our detectives, interpreted and played by Daniel Craig, will be definitely good in revealing and completely satisfying, at the same time logical, hyper logical, and completely strictly and prompt to details. What I found incredibly enormous in the huge amount of works that the movie has is of course the choice of the cast. Jan's books of Agata Christie's Bold Smile. You definitely see this kind of watch this sort of movie. First of all, we had the characters played by the Christopher Plummer, who is a famous writer who inherit all the fortunes and hold the house and the mansion, which by the way is located in a very isolated spot in Maryland, and exactly at the Aston. That's where the movie is taken from and is set. And at the same time we have all the family hierarchy. The secretary, we can say assistant of the famous millionaire Christopher Plummer, is called Fran, who will see exactly the murder, I mean not the murder, but she will discover first the body of the writer completely knifed on his neck. And then we have the pretentious and various family with the self-centered daughter, who she promptly inherit all the fortune of the father, or at least she's trying to hang on to the situation and trying to guide everyone, but at the same time is very self-egotistical, completely self-concentrating on what she is doing, not for the good of the others. Then we have her husband, who is completely broken, played by the cheaty David Johnson, who at the same time is cheating on her. The son was completely unfair and bad educated and never got to a school without being helped by his parents, with strong instructions called ransom, and played by the famous and fascinated Chris Evans, of course, who is arrogant and particularly not ready not to give up like on his inheritance and of course in his fortunes. Then we have the other three, like the Waltz family. Waltz is like the other son of Christopher Plummer, and at the same time is the which we can say so-called not very smart and a bit confusing boy, the one who doesn't have a lot of psychologically self-confidence in himself, and that's the reason why he's not going to be completely very confident in running the company of the father. And at the same time we have the other two, like his wife, the more like Elizabeth, more sort of very girls, and at the same time a bit shallow, superficial, that kind of girls that soon as he found in Daniel Craig, which is our special detective, the answer of his famous celebrity, she will start seeing him like a portrait of a Madonna and start licking basically his ass. Yes, we can definitely say that. And then we have their son, who is a bitter little Nazi, and very meticulous, like kind of boy that doesn't want to have anything involved with the family, doesn't take any responsibility, but who is very well keen on spying. And of course the girl played by Toni Collette, who is, we can say she's like adolescent or teenager girl who wants to finish her study, but at the same time she's doing everything to take out more money from his father as well, like from the great father as well. The sort of kind of situation. Then we have the protagonist, the two detectives that are helping at the same time Daniel Craig, who are, by the way, is two fantastic portrays the sort of gender police women that trying every time to be assistant, but not completely confident on what she's saying and not relying completely in his words, which makes the story more interesting as well. And then we have, of course, Marta Cabrera, who is the nurse taking care of Christopher Plummer every day, 24 hours a day, and she basically became the spot and center and the connection on any other characters, as she actually inherits the fortunes of Christopher Plummer. And then we have, of course, like the typical wife of Christopher Plummer, who is a very solitary lady waiting for her time to pass and her dad to come back and like to take her to another side, which is interpreted in a very formal, I think, sensitive and at the same time ironic way, because at the very end she will find herself really happy to help Daniel Craig in tension and to be able to reveal what happened exactly in that night, even for slight details. Gonna found in Marta Cabrera a sort of enemy, a situation of ambiguous haters in between the various characters, which lead them to think that she is going to be the martyr of the situation. In the end, they force her to try to basically we can say like they force her to tell the truth, when to make a sort of public confession in front of them, so that they can have the proof that she made something wrong. But exactly at the very end, Daniel Craig's end is going to turn the page of the story. So basically, I will suggest this kind of movie to everyone who doesn't really like simple artifact situation, who wants to explore until the very end what's going on in a situation. Is a psychological, not will say too much psychological, because the characters are very set and stereotype, but I will say that it's a very particular, intriguing story with a very downsides in his own little microcosm, and that's what makes the story interesting. It's because all the characters interact in various spaces and they return and they will come back at the same house, making feel everything a little bit more juicy spot and spicy. In my own opinion, every time I ran in front of a case or a particular murder situation, I felt like I'm not completely confident with myself, like there's something always missing. And there are very particular books that I would like to suggest. One of them is Ralph Newman, Girls in the College, where basically the story is told and is written from the sides of the murderer, so we are completely inside of the head of the murderer, which makes the narrative more involving, and from one point of view really what it should be like a narrations more catching and very developed, but I won't say that this is what makes the story itself special. What makes special is because we have very different kind of report and witness, and to find the connection in which the truth is always middle spot. Because then we have the character of Marta Cabrera, who is always vomiting in front of another false lie, so that makes easier to understand who is telling the truth or not. And then we have the character of Chris Evans, which is the more fascinating Ransom, who let us think about what's going on actually in his mind at a certain point of the film. We found himself very helpful to Martha, at the same time very sensitive, we can say emotional from this point of view, like he didn't really is the selfish person we're figuring out in a previous moment. But let's say that any kind of manipulation this character has until the end is not changing until and if not for these two characters who are the main one, who are evidently being in a constant change, Martha and Ransom, and this make them particularly movement and animated in this very flat zone scene. That's what I'm trying to say. Guys, as always, like this when we are talking about strange cases, they engage us at the point that we want to know more, and that's why for this specific episode I start also to gonna take the habit basically and acquire the habit to relate strange cases to a film review production. That's what I'm trying to do every time, and I found a sort of interesting murder that nobody was treating also by the other part of the community and the YouTube channel, and it's something that really catches me, specifically because it talks about the story of a woman murder that happens in England, in the north part of England. So I'm gonna start basically reporting all the information that I knew about these cases so that you can probably see something missing, and probably maybe the police is gonna investigate more and reopen the case, because that's really something that strikes me and that could eventually be shared with the other part of the media production. First of all, we are talking about a story that is located in the 1940s. 1940s is the period of the vintage era, something related to the most important photographers such as Richard Avenel, who is sticking up in the 50s, but it was exactly at the beginning of the 1943. On April the 18th, a group of young lads, Thomas Willets, Bob Fermer, Robert Hart, and Fred Payne, were out poaching in a forest area of Akeley Woods, Wychbury Hill in England. So Wychbury Hill is very famous also for witches crafted, as always said. In 1943, the Second World War was still in full swing and food was being rationed through the country. The boys frequently poached to top up the food store of their families. On this particular day, they didn't have much luck with catching rabbits, so they decided to head home and check a few nests along the way. Maybe they could grab a few birds' eggs. Bob Farmer noticed a nest in a wych elm, and he was pleased to find 4 eggs in it. He then encouraged one of the other boys to climb another nearby wych elm. Robert decided to climb, and as he looked down to the old tree trunk, he noticed a skull and eye sockets staring back at him. The boys ran home in terror, but decided not to tell any adult about their find because they had been trespassing on the land. However, Tommy Willets cracked through fear and eventually told his parents about the body they had found. The boys were instructed to take the police to the body in the tree, and an investigation took place. The tree was methodically cut away so that the skeleton could be removed without any damage to it. Professor Webster, the first zinc examiner on the case, located clove within the skull's mouth. He concluded that the corpse had been murdered. Certain parts of the skeleton seemed to be missing, so the police searched the area around the old tree. They eventually found the corpse's severed hand buried at the base of the original tree, and the body was eventually determined to be female, and had been placed inside the 3 feet first. Soon after death, she was aged at about 35, and she had given birth at least once. They concluded that she had died around late October 1941. The police, through they know, had enough to go and identify the corpse, but every avenue led to a dead hand. They turned to the media for help, yet still nobody came forward in information. Before long, the public came to their own conclusion. Could this be the body of a German spy who was caught by the Home Guard? The first, story, and the first inspiration they took from was about the body of missing Clara Bowerle, also known as Clara Bella, who disappeared in October 1941, a sort of actress that was very famous also because he was investigated to be a German spy. But that wasn't actually what it corresponded to be the truth. The first graffiti appeared on a wall in Old Hill in 1944, and it read, "Who put Lou Bella in the witch elm?" A matter of weeks later, a second example of the graffiti turned up on another nearby street reading, "Who put Bella down the witch elm, Hagleywood?" Both statements of graffiti had been written by the same hand. People started to believe that the vandal knew the identity of the skeleton corpse. Professor Margaret Murray of University College London studied the case for years and came to the conclusion that this could have been a murder carried out by a local cult. She firmly believed that many elements of the case were linked directly to several popular occult prices. The locals took this claim a step further and began suggesting that Bella was murdered by Black Coven operating out of Hagley Woods. The final example of the graffiti appeared on the Witchbury obelisk that overlooks the surrounding countryside in 1994 and in 1999. Somebody out there still knows who Bella is and does not want her to be forgotten. But to be real true, there were a lot of other investigations that were put aloud through these stories. And of course, most of them, they link also the possibility that Clara Bella was not a simple woman or a German spy, but a prostitute or something similar. After speculation later, some other investigation in the laboratory also found a way to track and sketch completely their body face. So other investigation and prejudice they were coming out from these cases were particularly becoming so profoundly catching and at the same time devoting to the real truth that the idea of this Bella being simply a German spy was completely taken for granted. Part start really now, as I found an extract exactly from the Home Office records of Schauspielerin Edwig Clara, and it was about a German, at the middle at the same times, a recognition that it was made about the body of Clara Bowerle. It has taken me a few years pursuing many leads, but I can finally say that Clara Bowerle has been laid to rest. Clara did not die stuffed into a witch elm in England, like somebody said. She was not Bella in the witch elm. She was a German actress and singer who passed away in a Berlin hospital on December 16, 1942. A while ago, I ordered the birth registration for Clara from the Standesamt in Ulm. That record gave her death registration number in Berlin. But with that in hand, I wrote to the relevant Standesamt in Berlin, and after a late wait, received her death registration in the mail last week. And the translation that follows. The Der ganzes Behandte. Of course. The actress, the translation said specifically, that the actress Edwig Clara Bowerle Protestant living in Berlin, exactly at Bleibetreue-Straße, 32, did on 7 December, 1922, at 11:45 in Berlin, Oberschöneweid, König Elisabeth Hospital. The deceased was born on 27 August 1905 in Ulm, at the Standesamt Ulm-Donau-Nach. The father of Fritzelle Adolf Bowerle, deceased, last living in Ulm, and the mother, Dorothea Barbara Bowerle, born Schaufele disease, last living in Ulm. And the deceased was not married. Registered upon written notification of the Amtsgericht Berlin on 19 Dezember 1942. Cause of death, lung infection, so-called pneumonia, veronal poisoning. A few things are of note. The first obviously being that Clara Bowerle, actress and singer, did not die in England, a sad casualty of their incompetence. Clara passed away in a Berlin hospital, a victim of veronal poisoning. Veronal, as we also know from other famous actresses like, for example, Marilyn Monroe, it could be a preview or a prescription of her own death as well, was a barbital known for its hypnotic properties. In the early half of the 20th century, Veronal was a popular sleeping head and it could be acquired without a doctor prescription. Unfortunately, prolonged use of the drug could cause the user to develop a tolerance for it, requiring larger and larger doses in order to achieve the same effect. This could be dangerous. There were many reports in German and British medical literature of severe poisoning and fatalities associated with Veronal. One could naturally wonder if perhaps Clara passed away through suicide, consuming a large dose of Veronal, but the truth is, we will never be likely to know. Her death will not, however, have been a pretty one. An account from an American doctor in 1914 outlines the progression of Veronal poisoning. A case of Veronal poisoning by Edward Swift, M.T., Los Angeles. The patient was a woman of 42 years. She had always been in good health, but was of highly neurotic temperament. At 11 a.m., I was called to see her. I had seen her the night before, when she was apparently in perfect health, but somewhat worried over some domestic troubles. I received a telephone call from her brother, who informed me that though his sister had gone to bed the previous night at 10 o'clock, she had as yet shown no evidence of awakening. On examination, I found the patient in coma, from which it was impossible to show the evidence of awakening as well, and no response from pressures over supraorbital nerve. There was no cyanosis, pulse 60, and of good quality, temperature normal, respiration 22. I immediately washed out her stomach with warm water, after which 6 ounces of black coffee and 1 egg was administered through the tube. Normal salt was given per rectum by the drop method 2 quarts at this time. When I saw her a few hours later, she was in the same condition, though her respiration was slightly deeper. About 4 a.m. the following morning, she became cyanotic. Her breathing, which had gradually been getting deeper, became stertorous, her pulse weak and irregular, being intermittent at times. Her temperature still remained normal. Caffeine, sodium benzoate in doses of GR and a camphor and either in doses of M.6 were given for cardiac stimulation. This treatment all improved the pulse temporarily. Her respiration gradually became more and more stertorous, and by the 3 in the afternoon she developed signs of pulmonary congestion. This gradually increased until there were signs of well-marked edema of the lungs. Her cyanosis gradually increased in spite of oxygen inhalation and hypodermic injection of atropine. Adrenaline was given without benefit. At 4 p.m., her stomach was washed out, and the return consists of brown fluid with a deceased fecal odor and containing some particles of fecal matter. There seemed to be a loss of tone of the intestinal tract. Of enemas given were not explained, and the function of the kidney was lessened, and in the last 24 hours of her life only 2 ounces of the urine were to be obtained by catheter. Altogether, she received 1 gallon of normal salt by the drop method, but this seemed to have no effect upon the secretion of urine. Hot packs and dry caps over the lungs were used, but nothing seemed to be on any avail. On investigation, it was found that she had taken 100 grains of Veronal just prior to return for the night. Read before the Los Angeles Country Medical Society. While her death registration notes that Clara's place of residence was a Bleibtreustrassen 32, a few blocks from the home of Joseph Jacob's parents, she actually passed away in the southeast corner of Berlin. Why did she die so far from home? That mystery that will likely remain unsolved. But the Königin Elisabeth Hospital was moved to another location after the war, and the former site on Tresco Valley only has a few sad ruins as a memorial to all those who passed through its door in search of hope and healing. That was the case that was definitely related to who put Bella in the witch elm, but of course there was never a strong connection to define it like the definitive, sort of solved case persistent in our history time. article adopted by Birmingham Live after 75 years of completely unknown histories and completely foolish consideration upon this murder. It was finally resumed by the laboratory, the face and the reconstruction of the skeleton of Bella in the Wych Ulme. She was a victim of a tangled wartime web of espionage, as someone says. But what skull was found wedged in a tree's hollow near Hagley, Worcestershire, has never been identified at all. But the killer who ritualistically maimed the body, found it useful to use a piece of taffeta cloth that was forced in Bella's mouth. One hand was severed, has never been brought to justice. That may change after Caroline Wilkinson, the expert, asked with rebuilding Richard Seal's face after the royals' remains were found under a Leicester Square park, recreated Bella's features. The professor of craniofacial identification at Dundee University used photographs taken at the time to put a face to the name. She could not use the actual skull discovered by 4 young schoolboys collecting board eggs in the thick woodland. There's a reason. That crucial piece of evidence has been lost by police. Birmingham Councillor Peter Douglas Osborne was an expert on Bella case, says. There's been confirmed by West Midlands Police, where a spokesperson said searches have been conducted by the Police Museum volunteers and they have confirmed that we hold no exhibit and can find no documentation that may relate to this case at either on the West Midlands Police Museum. Additionally, searches were carried by the Our Forces Records team, who have confirmed that there is no relevant documentation held with the major investigation team or in external storage. The skull dates back to a time when Hagley fell within the West Midlands police boundary, she explained. That has not been the case for many years. He had been housed at a Birmingham forcing lab, then moved to the police city base, Tayley Hall, on the Pershore Road. The skull's whereabouts are not known, as a spokesperson admitted. The striking images of Bella suspected of being a Nazi spy will feature in a new book, Who Put Battle in the Wych Ulme, written by Peter Samuel. But Birmingham Councillor Osborne, who has a keen interest in this country's most baffling crime, hopes it will at last provide answer. His late father, squadron leader William Douglas Osborne, was tasked with guarding the murder scene on the southern edge of the Black Country, when the remains were found on April 18, 1943. I believe she was killed before 1941. The reconstruction is impressive. Now, it's a question of asking members of the public to thumb through family albums. Anyone who had direct contact with her is probably dead. But the strange case is stuff of popular rural Slav TV series Midsommar Murders. And the mystery has endured because of sporadic outbreaks of graffiti in the area, the first appearing 6 months after the body was found. The question is, who was Bella? Painstaking detective and forensic work revealed the victim was aged, as I said, around 40, and had given birth to a child. But the body had rotted in the woodland for at least 18 months. The murder was ritualistic and all the hallmarks of a satanic ceremony. The crime scene mirrored an ancient ceremony known as a Hand of Glory, a sort of witch's ritual, and one of the hearts had been left 13 paces from the skeletal remains, an ancient custom used when a witch was executed. The choice of a tree was also significant, which plays an important part in the Black Hearts. Add to the mix the fact that the belladonna is the ancient name for deadly nightshade, a plant closely associated with witchcraft. So too was the murder scene Hagley Wood. The occult theory was cranked up following the murder of Charles Walton in February 1945 on nearby Meon Hill. He was found skewered to the ground by a pitchfork, and as Satanism was suspected by some, locals remained tight-lipped when approached by the police. Peter believes the devil worship theories as smokescreen spawned by MI5 and described those 14 places as convenient. Bella was a Nazi spy and she was in a Clan Hills area. Others believe she was slain after trapping upon a Third Reich cell. I believe the spy story, Peter says, but it's circumstantial evidence, there is no proof as such. The graffiti is another red herring. The initial ones may have been done by an ex-lover, attempting to get the case reopened. The rest have been copycats. One name for the victim dubbed Bella because of the graffiti. It has been claimed that the Czech-born Gestapo agent Josef Jacobs, as we said, captured by the Home Guard in 1941 after parachuting into Cambridgeshire, gave interrogators their name and picture. She was the spy lover's Clara Bauerle, a German actress and cabaret singer. But Jacob was no position to add to his claims. He was executed by firing squad on August 15, 1941, the last man to be put to death at the Tower of London. At present, Jacob's confession is simply one of a string of theories, some credible, some simply incredible. Police have in the past dismissed any talk of satanism and publicly stated to the position of scattered bones, suggested they had been displaced by wild animals. There is one thing beyond argument. Detectives attempting to solve the crime hit a wall of silence. The vision of what they found will stay with the town for a lifetime. Bob scrambled up an old wych elm tree and let out a piercing scream. The wedge in a hollow was on 16 December 1942. At the same time was in 1945 that Margaret Murray, the same anthropologist and archaeologist from University College of London, proposed a more radical theory about the witchcraft, where the severed hand that was found separated from the body in the forest was consistent with a ritual called the Hand of Glory, after Bella had been killed by gypsy during an occult ritual. Her ideas excited the local press and led investigators to consult another seemingly ritualistic killing of a man, so-called Charles Walton, in nearby Lower Quinton. But it was not exactly the right path, as other sort of considerations were made. A second possibility came from a statement made to police in 1953 by Una Mossop, in which she said that her ex-husband, Jacques Mossop, had confessed to family members that he and a Dutchman called Van Drelt had put the woman in the tree. Mossop and Van Drelt met for a drink at the Little Harms, a pub in Hagley. Later that night, Mossop said that the woman became drunk and passed out while they were driving. The man put her in a hollow tree in the woods, in the hope that in the morning she would wake up and be frightened into seeing the horror of her ways. Jack Mossop was confined to a Stafford mental hospital because he had recurrent dreams of a woman staring out at him from a tree. He died in the hospital before the body in the wych elm was found. And the likelihood of this being the correct explanation is questioned because Una Mossop did not come forward with this information until more than 10 years after Jack Mossop's death. So it could have been a particularly scary situation on another opinion and another alternative to show up. I'm back in the morning just to reflect upon any information that we had. And there's a lot of questions that I would love to raise in this particular situation. Why the skull, after all the technological advice and improvement that we had in the latest century, wasn't properly examined? Why then we found 3 important materials in this girl's mouth and nobody of them was able to investigate on that material? Because that was the tricky point. Everybody talks about witch conspiration, some others were thinking about prostitution, other than a simple sort of correlation with Clara Bella or Bauerle, which by the way is the more plausible theory. But in my personal concern, there's one more thing that it was always missing in the case. I'm not talking about solving the entire case because that will be impossible, but I will find another path where the police could start again to trace their own eater. First of all, the taffeta. The taffeta is one of the most prestigious material of the time. It's not a simple piece of clothes, it's a attitude, is an habit. Nobody would have probably earn or could afford a taffeta, is not because it was taking part to a big rich family. In being a photographer and art director, I know, for example, that the first photographer who encapsulated the importance of the taffeta was Adrian, who portrayed exactly the beautiful Jeanne Pellet while she was wearing it. She was a famous model in the 1940s. By the way, in being deeper accursion and maybe putting more research into this little village called Hagley, I found that there was a big giant company led by Joseph Bancroft who inherited a fortune out of his piece of clothes, and it was called Goblin Art Drapery. It was the company who had the most important piece of haute couture in all the states, and if we have to be honest with us, he was really famous because he was able to brought a lot of his model in the contest of his America of that 19 period. So the lady we are talking about was wearing it the taffeta, or somebody put in her and used that piece of clothes to suffocate her. Second clue, the asphyxiation. Knives, or I could have example handkerchief. Why someone was so genius to understand that the taffeta is not a breathable material? I mean, it was not cheap. It was very difficult to find on the market. And then this guy also know that it's not breathable, so it can suffocate. That's really very rare. Or the boy was properly capable of understanding the use of the material and its property. That means that he was also involved into some hairdresser sector, because it's really difficult for someone, especially a boy, to understand that the taffeta was some particular craft's clothes who is not lead to breath. That's why the mother could also possibly be a female. Second thing, the taffeta isn't a cloth that is easily grasped, so it can let people to let their imprinting very easily on the tissues and on the fabric. That means that if they really want, the police or any other investigator involved in this case would have probably tried to date back the result of the DNA, and it would have been able to trace exactly who touched the clothes before she finished in the mouth of the girl. Third but not least, the taffeta is easily catchable. I mean, if you're wearing a taffeta, everybody would turn his back because it makes a lot of noise. So it's a redundant piece of clothes. So actually, it was used in order not to get lost, or in the way that she could probably not be devastated or not be taken. And it's something really particular because why would someone be interested in hearing the clothes? Or is someone who has not a lot of visibility and wants to check out that the girl is remaining exactly at the side, so that means it could be blind? Or maybe is someone that actually was not caring about this particular property of the clothes but knows exactly how they could be useful to. Is that there was ended exactly the time, the war time. It was not so easy to find a dentist in that time that he was able to capture completely the shape of your teeth. There's also this kind of deduction, but we still stick into the possibility that this kind of taffeta wasn't actually belonging to the girl. That was I was thinking as well, that actually the mother had a supply with this material, which everything may make things more easy to understand, because if that is real and he was part of a rich family, there is also the possibility in being a little village that he was coming from a very ancient and rich heritage. This led me to think that the first suspect of the story could be the Hagley family, who was finding himself rich and inherited by the Queen of England. They had their sort of mansion in Hagley Street, and exactly Hagley Hall is visible to everyone, and you can also visit it. There is a library inside of it and a museum. And inside of this library and museum, what's more catching, there was a lot of report and a lot of objects that were belonging to a girl in the 1939 who was called Isabella Helen. So this name Isabella actually recognized perfectly to the one of the girl that he was missing and the one that finished in the tree, because everybody was thinking that the name of Bella was not exactly belonging to the boy who was trying to make a big loud voice out of it, trying to use the story just to appear, and then he finished in the hospital. But actually was the real name of the girl that he was finishing the train, and if that is true, this was not, of course, the diminution of Clarabella, like we said before, but Isabella, which means that the girl was really related to some sort of high-class families in a way, but we don't know which kind of relationship she has with that. And so, in my personal opinion, the police cover a lot of the story because there was a big scandal out of it. And it was not related to witchcraft, it was not related to a simple ritual, it was something deeper. And it was a murder that knows exactly what he was doing in any single circumstances. Even the choice of the location was not casual. I mean, it was in the middle of nowhere in the forest next to an obelisk where anybody could come and where the scream it was impossible to hear. But why she brought her until there? I think she simply carried her in a car and there was no trace of the car, but if they walk inside of the forest, how she managed to convince her to go so far from the house? So there's a lot of thing to dig into that, but I hope you will be really pleasure to let your comment down below and wait for me and the next YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh, my sweet darling. Oh, my dearest love. I'll count the hours that you're away.
Oh, darling, so alive.
Not on the lips.
What?
I'm going to that party at Nana and Nikki's later. I don't want to smear my lipstick.
Oh.
You understand.
Of course.
On aboard!
Oh, dear.
Well, I guess this is it.
Freddie, darling. Well, how can I say in a few minutes what it's taken me a lifetime to understand?
Won't you try?
All right. You've got it, mister. I'm yours, all of me. What else can I say?
My sweet love.
The hair. Just been said.
Sorry.
I hope you like old-fashioned weddings.
I prefer old-fashioned wedding night.
You're incorrigible.
Does that mean you love me?
You bet your boots it does.
Oh, my only love.
Taffeta, darling.
Taffeta, sweetheart.
No, the dress is taffeta. It wrinkles so easily.
Oh.
On aboard!
Oh, there's that horrid man again. Oh, hurry now, before I make a fool of myself. Ah, the nails! Oh.
Sorry. Goodbye, darling.
Goodbye, Freddie.
Darling!